How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the show. My name's Sean. This is my co-host, Fabian. And today on the Personal Finance Takeover, we're going to be looking at an important first step in your financial journey, and that is your emergency fund. So let's do a little bit of an overview of today's episode, and then we'll just jump into the first topic.
Sounds good. So in today's episode, we're going to be discussing what is an emergency fund, which type of expense is an emergency, because not every expense that you're going to encounter is going to be an emergency. How to calculate your number, because everyone's number is different. We all have different expenses. We all have the different values to those expenses. So how to calculate yours. Once you come up with that number and build up your savings, where do you put that money at, and why it's never a good idea to rely on credit cards when for an emergency.
Right. So let's just jump into that first topic is what exactly is an emergency fund?
Yeah. So an emergency is basically money set aside to cover unplanned expenses. So think of hospital bills, think of car repairs, house repairs, or, temporary loss of income. So what you want to do is make sure you have enough money. Think of it as insurance for yourself. So have money to cover those expenses just to keep life going.
Right. I like that term, the insurance for yourself. I think that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
So now that we have the definition of what an emergency fund is, what justifies an actual emergency versus something that might not be an emergency?
So think of an emergency as something that wasn't planned. So no one ever plans losing their job. No one ever plans, the death of a family member or having to fly out to attend a funeral. No one ever plans a medical bill or home repair. So, just having money aside to cover that will save you and prevent you from having to take on, high interest debt, which can ruin your financial freedom. So just want to make sure that you have that money set up, but also keep in mind that not every expense is going to be an emergency. So, Christmas shopping is not an emergency.
Yeah.
New shoes came out that you really wanted. It's not an emergency. That's not a good excuse to tap into your emergency fund. The new gaming console came out, not an emergency. So just be mindful of those expenses. And if that's something you really want to seek out and you really want, then just plan for them, save for them, but make sure that, you're building your emergency fund and you don't mess with that unless you really need to.
Right. So those savings are going to be separate than your emergency fund for sure. All right. So let's dive into calculating your emergency fund. Like what exactly makes up those expenses, all of that. So we have the basic stuff like our rent and mortgage. What are some other things that we have?
Yeah. So think of like your bare essentials. So if you were to lose your job tomorrow, what do you need to cover? So that way can get you to, the next month or the month after until you're able to find another job and get that money coming back in.
Right.
So first thing to look at is your rent or mortgage, depending on your situation. Got to make sure you're looking at groceries because, you got to eat. If you have family members or whatever that depend on you, gotta make sure you have that, gas for your car, your utilities, student loans, if you have one, car payment, debt obligations, whether it's personal or consumer debt, auto insurance, cell phone bill, and life insurance. There might be other things that, that you might need to add on to that, but this is a case by case example. So it all just depends on what you need and how much money you got to save for that. So say in this example, if you took all your expenses and it added up to $3,000, what's next? What do we do?
Yeah. So you could do like, you set yourself a little goal and you come up with that number. Say like, for example, Fabian said $3,000, say you add up all your stuff, it equals that. Yours might be different, but just in an example here. So we have $3,000. Now, that could be your first goal. That's 1 month's worth of all these expenses that you need in an emergency. So you set that goal, work toward it, and then, all right, now I want to build up to maybe a 3-month goal or a 6-month goal. And I like that plan where you go step by step because it makes it easier than like, okay, I need a 6-month emergency fund. Having that big number, which in this case would be $18,000, that's a big number to be like, all right, chipping away at it little by little. But if you're breaking down into that first month, hit that goal, you're going to feel good about it. All right, let's work on that 3-month goal. So now I'm going to build up 9,000 and then go to the 6. Maybe you go to a year. It depends on how you feel about it, whatever you're comfortable with in an emergency. So just go ahead and set those little goals and build up to it.
Yeah, every situation is going to be different. So there's not going to be 2 scenarios that are going to be exactly the same. Yeah. So you just got to make sure that, you calculate that number, what you feel comfortable with, and and set yourself up that goal. If you feel
Mhm.
comfortable with 1 month, get to a month. If you feel comfortable
Right.
with 3 month, 6 month, like it just know that the number does look intimidating, but
Mhm.
as you start this process and you start hitting these goals and you start reaching the amount you want to, you're gonna feel a lot better about yourself. You're gonna feel a lot
Mhm.
better about your financial standpoint, and it's actually gonna help you prepare as you're eventually taking over your finances and building some wealth.
Right. So now something that's going to come up is like, okay, I know how much I want to start saving. Where do I put this money? And where should I maybe not put this money?
Yeah, so looking at like once you're starting to build your emergency fund up,
Mhm.
it's always a good idea to do your research and see what kind of account is best for you.
Mhm.
So for me, speaking personally, I like online savings account. They tend to offer you a higher interest rate than your conventional savings accounts at a bank, at your nearby bank. The only thing you got to consider is sometimes they have requirements, they have account minimums and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So just make sure you do your research, but highly look into or suggest to look into online savings account or your traditional savings account if you're happy with that.
Mhm.
Kind of what we want to avoid is putting the money in the stock market. It's not always liquid. So if
Mhm.
the economy takes a downturn and all of a sudden your $3,000 are only worth 1,500 now, then
Mhm.
you're gonna miss out on some money. So you just want to make sure that you have that money protected and it's available at all times when you need it. So
Yeah, exactly. I'm same thing, emergency fund. I like the online savings account. It's liquid. You could get access to it at any time something comes up, you got it right there. Usually when bad things happen, it tends to happen in more than just one thing at a time.
yeah,
So maybe you lose your job while there's some type of problem with the economy. So the stock market takes a crash, and there you go. Your emergency fund just got cut in half. So definitely don't want to have a bunch of bad things happening all at once. Just keep your money in something liquid. That's how we do it. So
and again, just do your research.
yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, there's
Hmm.
no right or wrong answer to this question. One thing that I hear most people talk about is, oh, well, I have a credit card. I don't
Hmm.
have this money saved up, but I have a credit card with an available credit limit of $5,000,
Right.
10,000, whatever the case might be. Like, why don't I just rely on that when an emergency strikes?
Yeah. So this is something I personally did in the past, and I don't think it's a good idea. I don't do this anymore. And you get hit with something, say an emergency comes up, or like say your car blows a tire and you need to repay that or you need to pay for that. So you use a credit card instead of an emergency fund because that's the way you were going about it. Well, now you're in debt and you not only have to get yourself back out of debt, you're now having another expense every month.
Exactly.
And what if another emergency happens and another one and so on? And you're just digging yourself into a hole, right?
Yeah.
So having that emergency fund in a savings account or something like that, then you take from that and then you just slowly build back up, or you can do it fast, I suppose, but you just build your emergency fund back up and you don't have to worry about paying interest. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about how compound interest hurts you in this situation.
Yeah, so the thing with compound interest on a credit card, what most people don't realize is when if you don't pay off the balance the first month, the credit card company is going to charge you an interest, which is
Hmm.
usually a really high interest.
Yeah.
And if you keep dragging that amount out, then it's going to be interest on top of interest on top of interest. So
Yeah.
at this point, it's compounding interest working against you.
Yeah.
But eventually, when you reach a goal to where you're investing,
Hmm.
you can actually invest that money in the stock market and actually have compound interest work for you. So
Right.
as companies are paying you dividends and stuff like that. But I
Hmm.
think that'll be another topic for another episode because
Yeah,
we can
definitely.
get into compound interest. But for now, for this episode, do not rely on credit cards to cover emergencies.
Yeah.
Please have that money available for yourself. Have it ready. So if you're ever in a bad situation or you need to
Mhm.
cover an expense that you weren't anticipating, you have that money and you can sleep better at night. So,
Yeah, definitely. So that's it for the first episode here on Personal Finance Takeover, covering your emergency fund. So make sure you get that together. If you don't have one already, start chipping away at it, set those goals, and build it up. All right. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
peace.